How do you find a great domain? It's a question I'm often asked. Well, there are three things you have to take into consideration. One is budget, two is time frame, basically how quickly do you need it, and the third is the type of domain you're looking for, either brandable or keyword. It's all about that money, and if your budget is small, say $100 or less, you're pretty much going to be stuck to registration, which means registering a domain that no one else has bought yet or someone has let expire. The downside to that is even most decently good domains are already owned by someone. Most registrars charge between $10 and $40 a year for a domain. If your budget's higher than that, then you start having options in what's known as the aftermarket. One such aftermarket is auctions. At auction, most decent domains go anywhere between a couple $100s and a few $1,000s. $2,000 to $5,000 tends to be the sweet spot for quality domains, and the truly premium ones can go for much, much more, even into the millions. The second consideration is how quickly do you need it? If you need it now, you've only got two options. The first one, again, is registration, coming up with a domain that no one else has, and the second is finding a domain in the aftermarket with a buy it now option. Most buy it now domains result in a quick turnover, but some do go into escrow and can take as much as 5 days. If time isn't a factor, more options start to open up again. A lot of domains in the aftermarket allow you to make an offer, and then you and the current domain owner can haggle back and forth, much like you would with a used car salesman. Once you make an offer, however, that seller may respond immediately, or it may take him days to get back to you. And with offers and counteroffers back and forth, this process could drag on for weeks. There's also the chance that the domain you're interested in has an astronomical price, either rightly so because it's truly worth that, or more likely because the owner thinks it's worth that. The third option, if you've got time, is once again auctions. Namejet, Snapnames, Pool, Dropcatch, and Phoenix all operate expiring domain auctions where you make an initial bid on a domain you're interested in, and when it expires, these services attempt to capture it. If they are successful at grabbing it and you are the only bidder, you'll be awarded it at the opening bid amount. If there are additional bidders, it will typically go into a 3-day extended auction between you and the other bidders. If there's an expiring domain name that you really want, you should attempt to obtain it through all of these options. In addition to those, GoDaddy and Dynadot have their own expiring auctions. These auctions are for domains that are in a purgatory state known as a redemption period, where the original domain owner still technically has a few days in which they can renew their domain at an inflated price. If the original domain owner does renew, you do get a refund, but you obviously don't get the domain. If they don't renew, and most do not, you'll gain control of the domain in about 5 days or so. Most of these auction services that I have mentioned also have a regular marketplace for domains listed by their owners that are simply for sale. Some have buy it now pricing, while others require you to make an offer. Some other domain marketplaces for aftermarket domains are Cedo and Afternic. Cedo was the first domain marketplace, originally founded by Tim Schumacher. Afternic was the second domain marketplace not long after Cedo, founded by brothers Roger and Michael Collins. Both Cedo and Afternic have since been bought out by other companies. Cedo is currently owned by United Internet, and Afternic is currently owned by GoDaddy. Another interesting marketplace to pop up recently is brandbucket.com. They sell a domain with a logo, which can be a great option if you're looking to take that creative step out of the process. An additional market worth mentioning is buydomains.com, which was originally founded by Mike Mann, which has domains that have a wide range of price, anywhere in the hundreds to $50,000 or even $100,000 or more. The third point of consideration, what kind of domain do you want? Brandable or keyword? A good example of a brandable name would be something like Exxon. The word Exxon has no other meaning except that we all relate it to the petroleum company. On the other hand, if you had something like conferencetable.com, that's a keyword domain. I don't own conferencetable.com, but I do own a conference table. But someone does own that domain. Let's say you own 10 conference table stores. Conferencetable.com would be the perfect domain for you. If you went to the web address and saw that it wasn't being used and you couldn't find it on any of the marketplaces I previously mentioned, you could do a whois on it. A whois lookup lets you see who the owner of the domain is. Most every domain registrar has a whois lookup on their website. In the case of GoDaddy, there's a link for it in the footer of their website. However, the whois tool that I prefer is domaintools.com. It's been around forever, and it's a solid tool. Once you have performed a whois lookup, it might return an owner with the name of domain privacy, privacy protection, domains by proxy, or some similar name with privacy or proxy in it. These are anonymity services that many of the domain registrars offer, almost always for a fee, but it shields the actual owner of the domain and is typically done for reasons such as reduction of junk mail and telemarketing calls for the owner, as well as a myriad of other reasons. However, the email address that is shown will typically forward to the owner. Assuming that it does not have privacy services and you actually can see the owner's name and email address, you can email the owner and ask if they're willing to sell. That said, if you did own those 10 conference table stores, you're probably very Googleable as a conference table kingpin, and a seller with this knowledge would consider you a jackpot to get a lot of money out of you. In this case, you can also shield your identity from the current owner by using a domain buying service. There are several of these out there. GoDaddy and Network Solutions both offer one. In the GoDaddy instance, they charge $49.99 for their service plus an additional 20% of the purchase price if they can actually obtain it for you. So the more you pay, the more they make. Because of this, I don't necessarily think theirs is the best one to use. From what I can tell, Network Solutions charges a $39 fee for the service plus an additional 5% of the purchase price if they can obtain it for you, which is much less than GoDaddy. I normally would never recommend Network Solutions since their domain registration pricing is astronomical at $35 per year versus GoDaddy's $12 and Uniregistry's $11 for basically the same service. Also, be aware that a single keyword such as table.com, which again I don't own, would easily be a very expensive domain. Single dictionary words tend to go for anywhere from $20,000 on the low end to well over $1 million. When my company acquires domains, we primarily use GoDaddy auctions, NameJet, or Snap names. We have on occasion contacted the owner of a domain before, and we try to do that as anonymous as possible. On a side note, while all other registrars charge for the anonymous domain privacy service, Uniregistry does not. It's totally free. Okay. In my earlier example, I gave the example of conferencetable.com. After checking it out, it is actually for lease for $400 a month. So you're thinking you're going to be paying $4,800 a year for that. In 10 years, you've paid $48,000 for this domain. I would never recommend doing a lease. It might be right for someone, but I can't think of it being ever right for me. You never really own the domain. Most likely after a year, 2 or 3 years, you're well beyond the value of the domain. If I do my job correctly in marketing, I'm hopefully going to grow this thing to be a world-recognized brand, which is really helping the domain owner increase the value of his domain that I could lose at some point. There is domain leasing going on. There's a lot of people who are typically domain sellers who are for it. I just don't ever see how it would be useful for a domain buyer. I'd be more than happy to lease any of my domains because it would be in my best interest to lease them. But as a buyer, I don't feel like it would be in my best interest to buy a domain that way or to obtain a domain that way since I never own it. So there you have it. Those are, in my opinion, the best ways to find a great domain. Thanks for watching. If you found this useful, hit the subscribe button so that you can find more useful stuff and share this with anyone you know who's interested in buying domains.